Hey guys, James with TFBTV. Sexy, isn't it? Guess the gun's not bad either. Hey-o! The 80s were a dark time. You had to rewind tapes, television shows were terrible, porn cost money, and the Australians said, you know what, we're sick and tired of the FNFAL, the L1A1 version that they used. We need a replacement. So in the hot-ass Australian summer of 1985, the Aussies got together and they got two of the greatest rifles ever invented, the M16A2 version and the Steyr AUG. And they placed these two titans head-to-head in the outback. There had to have been a cooler way to say that, like crack to crack in the outback, or like the Gunder Thunder down under, or something. Anyway, so in just June of last year, 2019, the Australian government declassified a report, some of the most extensive, intense trials that I've seen, and it was just between the M16A2 from Colt and the Steyr AUG. So I got this, and if you're a freaking nerd like me, you saw this report and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. 3 volumes, and in fact, I have painstakingly OCR'd. I've used like Adobe OCR, optical character recognition, so you can Control F and find them. I've appended and OCR'd and put those reports all into one document. I'm gonna put a link down in the description so you guys can download it, check it out for yourself. They had a bunch of like random pages in there, like whoever is using the scanner, whatever Australian guy was scanning this for the government archives didn't know like to get rid of the front and back feature of the scanner, so it was like every other page is a blank page. I got rid of all that shit, so there's a nice clean copy of the report in there. So what we're gonna talk about today, I'm gonna rely on some of those findings to make an argument why the Steyr AUG is better than the M16, or M4, or AR-15, or whatever. So the M16, one of my most favorite guns of all time, if not the best gun ever invented. God and Eugene Stoner, as my good buddy Clint Smith likes to say, invented this gun, and it is virtually perfect. Briefly, the M16 in 1964 by Eugene Stoner to use the 223 cartridge. That cartridge was invented to be used by the AR-15, M16, M4. Uses a direct impingement gas system. That is, there's a little tube that does not move. You've got a hole in the barrel here, a gas port. After a cartridge is fired, the expelled gases come backwards through that pipe, blow in the bolt carrier, unlock the bolt, cycle the next round in. So a very simple system, and most importantly, it doesn't move, meaning you can get great accuracy even out of inexpensive AR-15s or M16s because you don't have any harmonic distortion, like when you think about the AK-47 with that big long stroke piston just really ramming it in there and causing the barrel to wobble, causing this acoustic whip, making the gun less accurate. You don't have that with the AR-15 or M16. The Steyr AUG, invented in, I believe, 1977, using one of my favorite systems, that is a short stroke gas piston system. It's got a short stroke gas piston. That means that whenever you fire it, you've got the gas block. Gas goes into the piston. There's a small piston that pushes a little tappet and a tappet rod, and that's what unlocks the bolt, and it cycles the action. A little bit of an oversimplification, but I don't want to get bogged down in those details for purposes of this video today. Before we get to the gritty titty, I want to say thank you to the Australian guys that kick these things around the desert. I want to say thank you to the Firearm blog, because that's, first of all, who I work for, and second of all, they actually have extensive coverage on the Steyr AUG and the history of the Steyr AUG, so go check them out. Third, there's a website I found called The Cove that had a very good synopsis, like in 5 pages, broke down this 3-volume report that I've put in the description, and not only is The Cove about killing dolphins, but apparently it's about the Steyr AUG too. Who'd have thought? So The Cove, I'll put the link in the description. You can go check it out, even though it's suspect, because I notice he cites at least 2 YouTube channels. The first way the AUG beats the M16, reliability. I think that this is overstated. I think the M16 is more reliable than it gets credit for. Take, for example, Andrew's video where he threw an AR-15 in a barrel, dragged it behind his truck. It had a bunch of dirt and rocks and shit in there. He pulled it out. It worked just fine. It does a good job, I feel like, of keeping gunk out, and as long as you keep it well lubricated, it seems to run very well. The Steyr AUG, on the other hand, short stroke piston systems are great because they're so reliable. Everything's contained. All of the fouling goes into the piston tube and onto the piston instead of the bolt and the bolt carrier. So maybe that's why the AUG edged out the M16. First, the Australians perform a dust test. Each gun was subjected to the same amount of sand and dust and then fired. Coincidentally, both the M16 and the AUG performed equally well, and they both performed better than the FAL. Second, they did a sand drag test, which was kind of cool. It was meant to imitate crawling in the sand with the rifle. They did 20 drags of the M16, the FAL, the AUG. They did 10 drags per side at the speed of 1 meter a second, dragging these guns basically on a rope over sand. On the sand drag test, the AUG had no failures whatsoever. The M16 with a metal magazine failed 3 of the 20 drag tests, and all of the failures were failures to extract that required tools, basically a cleaning rod, to fix. The M16 passed the test when using a thermal plastic magazine. It makes you wonder how it would perform with like a Magpul P-Mag, but it still had 2 failures, and the comments say that the magazine was difficult to remove because sand had accumulated. Third, they performed a mud test. They had 12 tanks of mud numbered 1 through 12, each containing more clay and sand than the last. So tank number 1 had the least amount of sand and clay, tank number 12 had the most sand and clay, and each gun was immersed for a minute, then function tested by firing or attempting to fire 5 single shots, followed by the remainder of the magazine in 3 to 5 round bursts. And it's funny because it sounds like a project my dad would have where he's like got this idea of how it's gonna go. Well, they put both the guns in mud tank 6 for a minute and none of them work. It is way too much sand and mud, and I can tell you, I did a similar video where I put some sand and mud in a bucket and I used a Glock 19 and an SR9, and holy shit, like that stuff, mud and gunk getting in a gun will screw it up permanently. I had to send the Ruger, and I did the same thing with the Keltec P11, had to send them both back to the factory to get fixed. Like mud and gunk is no joke. So even these engineers, super smart dudes, even though they are Australian, are like, oh my God, like the one that we thought was the average barrel, that one killed all the guns. So they started from 1 and worked their way up. The M16, the AUG, they both pass bucket 1 that has the least amount of clay and sand in it. You get to tank 2, the M16 tapped out of that test. The AUG passed tank 2. The AUG passes tank 3. It isn't until it gets to tank 4 that the Steyr AUG fails. So according to this test, not only is the AUG more reliable, but it's also more durable. I don't know if you guys know this, but Battlefield Las Vegas, who we've shot videos over at Battlefield Vegas during SHOT Show before, super nice guys. They've always been very accommodating to TFB and to TFBTV, but they post a lot on AR-15.com, and they run a lot of full auto through a lot of guns every single day. So they kind of know what guns work and what guns don't work. They also said that the bolt in a Steyr AUG will last 2 or 3 times longer than bolt carrier groups in their full auto AR-15s and M16s. Again, these guys probably fire millions of rounds through their machine guns every year, and they keep meticulous records, so they know and they're not kidding around. Turning back to the test, part of the reason why the AUG might be so much more reliable is because it handles heat a lot better. Most piston-based guns are going to handle heat better than a direct impingement gun because you're not dealing with hot gases being propelled through a metal tube right into the bolt carrier group. The Declassified Australian report revealed that the Steyr AUG at the commencement of the rifling in the barrel, after firing the same amount of rounds through the M16, was up to 100 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than the M16's barrel. They also stated that the M16 would start cooking off rounds after 6 mags of full auto fire, while the AUG takes another mag, so around 7 mags before it starts cooking off. While I would think that the AUG runs a lot cooler because of the short stroke piston system, these engineers who know way more about this than I do surmised that it was from the AUG's barrel being unshrouded and the fact that the aluminum receiver acts like a giant heat sink in the AUG. Also, the bore, the chamber, and certain components of the gas system are fully chrome plated, so those are going to last a lot longer than, say, unplated metals. The Australian testing revealed that the Cold Hammer forged barrel, the AUG, would last well over 10,000 rounds, and according to Steyr engineers would last 20,000 or more rounds, while the Colt M16 barrel would be shot out far sooner than 10,000 rounds. According to the testing, around 5,000 to 6,000 rounds for the Colt M16 before accuracy became unacceptable. The gas block on the AUG will fail far before the barrel ever does. So what happens if you do actually wear out the barrel on the AUG, or if the gas block blows out on it, and let's say you're a soldier in the field, it needs maintenance? What are you gonna do with the AUG? With the AUG, very easy. It literally takes seconds. You can just take a new barrel, pop it right on there. Look at that, you're good to go. On and off in 5-6 seconds. It's incredible. And with the M16, while you can, yes, just change uppers, if you do wanna re-barrel or put a new gas block on an AR-15 upper, you're going to need a workshop and a gunsmith. That means you can go short barrel to long barrel in no time, even a light machine gun configuration if you want to. Steyr actually makes a bolt so you can go open bolt configuration, allowing the gun to cool more quickly if it is in its light machine gun config. Next, you have an easy to adjust gas system. All you have to do is press this little tab right here and then rotate, and you can go from 3 settings. You can go from like grenade or single shot if you want to fire it suppressed. You don't want the action to cycle if you're firing a grenade. And then you have the adverse conditions setting, which gives you a little bit more gas to help cycle the action. Aside from the obvious reasons this is useful, the test also revealed why this is so awesome. And note that this is a feature the M16 does not have. The Australians performed a spray test where they simulated 12 hours of rainfall in about an hour and a half. They then dumped a few mags through the guns. The M16 failed the rain test after just 45 rounds. The AUG actually failed the test after only 3 rounds. But they then switched the AUG to its adverse condition setting, and with this additional horsepower, it passed the test flawlessly. The AUG's Bullpup design also makes it easier to handle and makes it more compact while giving it better ballistic performance. This is an 18-inch barrel in the AUG, including the flash hider. This is a 10.5-inch barrel that I have on this M16, but it's 13 overall inches whenever you include the flash hider. So if you check this out, the AUG with a 16-inch barrel and 2-inch flash hider is shorter than the AR-15 with a 10.5-inch. You're going to get the AUG up to that magical 2,500 feet per second number that you need for 223 or 5.56 to reliably fragment, but it's gonna be in a size that's as small as like almost a personal defense weapon. Also, all of the weight's concentrated to the back of the gun, so it's actually very easy to use one-handed if you have to. Try it, I swear to God, it'll blow your mind. Also, as you can see in some of these videos, I could run really easily empty-handed because of the balance. It's all right here. It's almost like running with a football. You could run and you can have an open hand. Now, if you're left-handed because your mother was a witch, note that it's also much easier to switch the AUG from right hand to left hand configuration. You can just kind of swap the ejection port over and you can go right handed to left handed. While it is cool that you can make the gun ambi without getting a whole new receiver like you need with the AR-15, M16, what have you, note that you are going to get brass bukkake if you have to fire the AUG offhand. I'm holding a right hand configuration AUG with my left hand as my dominant hand, and you can see that I'm gonna have a bad day. Finally, firing an AUG is better for your health. Turns out they actually did carbon monoxide testing because they were worried about soldiers firing these guns from bunkers and pillboxes, and they found out that for some reason, I mean, this makes 0 sense to me, but for some reason, the AUG emits less than a quarter of the carbon monoxide whenever you fire a round from it than the M16, M4, AR-15. Totally weird thing, but it turns out it's better for your health to shoot the AUG. At the end of the day, I think you guys know I'm an AR-15, M16 guy, still my favorite. The AUG is a close follow-up, but for the Australians who ended up adopting the AUG and still use it to this day, it wasn't even close. Listen to this freaking conclusion. I wish somebody would say this about me. Without exception, including the soldier firers, all preferred the Steyr in terms of shooting performance, cleaning, maintenance, and handling. In conclusion, from the results of the engineering evaluation, the EDE, that is engineering development, has no hesitation in stating that the Steyr is the significantly better weapon of the IW contenders in terms of satisfying the engineering aspects of ASR 48.8 and is considered suitable for introduction into service without any modifications. Damn, that is an endorsement, boys. And the last reason, it's sexy. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm sorry, it's sexy. I think that this is a better looking gun. Guys, I'm gonna drop a little poll down in the description as well. I'm gonna drop a poll and I wanna ask you, I'm just curious what your opinions are, and you'll be able to see the results. What do you think is the better gun? The AR-15, the M16, M4, or the Steyr AUG. The results may surprise us. I've got to say thanks for nerding out with me. I really enjoyed poring over this report. I enjoyed even compiling it, putting it together for you guys to use. A quick caveat, of course, right now we're at the M16A4 variant. They were using, back in the day, when they did this test in 1985, they were using the M16A2. But they were also using the A1 version of the Steyr AUG, which is of course older than the one that I'm holding here, the A3 version. And while I do want to defend the M16 a little bit more vigorously than I am right now, I do also have to point out that, and again, I'll leave it to the experts like Chris Bartacci to tell you this, but most of the mechanical improvements, most of the reliability improvements occurred between the M16A1 and the M16A2. I don't think that there were much in the way of mechanical improvements and reliability improvements to the A3 and the A4 versions of the M16. The M16A2 was probably mechanically the biggest change that you saw. Stroll on down there to the description, look at this report, feel free to check it out. And if you don't want to read like 200 pages, I mean, who wouldn't want to read 200 pages about small arms? If you want to skip all the bullshit, just go to this guy's website, The Cove or whatever. I've dropped the link in the description, and he's got like a 5-page nitty-gritty synopsis that you can rely on. Guys, thanks a ton for watching. It really means a ton, everything you guys do for us. But thank you even more to our Patreon and Subscribestar supporters. Couldn't be here without you guys. We give you independent content. We don't need to take money from manufacturers and like sell you BS reviews. Oh yeah, this gun's great because I got $5,000 for it. But that's all because of you guys at Patreon and Subscribestar. So if you guys like the content, do us a favor, hop over there, help us out, please. Just give us $1 a month or something like that. It means a lot. Thank you to our sponsors, Ventura Munitions, the best ammo store online. Go check them out. And thank you to Top Gun Supply, your online shooting sports superstore. Finally, Blue Alpha Gear. We give away Blue Alpha Gear belts to our Patreon and Subscribestar supporters every month, so be sure to hit them up too. Guys, take care.